Volcanoes mesmerize and terrorize, captivate and unsettle.
Long ago, volcanic eruptions were seen as the gods' anger, a divine fury. Nowadays, scientists have the knowledge to interpret them.
We're not going to be able to stop volcanoes erupting, but what we can do is try to understand them better.
Like time bombs scattered across the globe, they tick away. 800 million people live within 62 miles of an active volcano.
To give you an idea of the power of these explosions, the amount of energy released during the eruption itself, many, many times, that of the Hiroshima atomic bomb, for example.
After the immense blast, often comes the searing cloud of ash. The threat hangs heavy over Italy's Bay of Naples, home to 4 million people, bracketed by two formidable fire-breathing titans. On one side looms the legendary Vesuvius, on the other, the Phlegraean Fields.
Naples is just a stone's throw away, and it would take mere minutes for the scorching pyroclastic flows to engulf the city.
Which one should we fear, Vesuvius or the Phlegraean Fields? Only time will tell.
An awakening volcano can trigger a cascade of calamities. In Indonesia, devastating tsunamis accompany every eruption. How do these massive waves form? What hellish havoc do they wreak?
It's not just water, it's a wall of water charged with cars, trees, it's a building, it's lethal. It just batters a person to death quite quickly.
Seattle, on the west coast of the US, might one day be swallowed by a volcanic mudslide. The huge eruption of Mount St. Helens offers a glimpse of the danger hanging over the city.
These mud flows are very powerful. They're like concrete flowing down. They can be, tens to 100 meters in thickness, just bury everything that they come across.
Where in the world will a volcano erupt next? And with what devastating consequences? How can we brace ourselves for the unpredictable? Come explore the most perilous and spectacular volcanoes on our planet. The danger posed by some volcanoes is unmistakable, while others seem to have been extinguished for eternity. Currently, there are over 1,600 volcanoes classified as active worldwide.
An active volcano is one that had an eruption within the past 10,000 years. It is like an expiration date. If the eruption is more recent than 10,000 years, we consider the volcano still active. If the eruption is older than 10,000 years, the volcano is classified as inactive.
The people that live close to the volcano, they have to know what the volcano are. So to know a danger means that we can all deal better with this danger.
In Italy, this danger looms over the 4 million residents of Naples and its metropolitan area. The Bay of Naples, situated in the southwest of the country, is one of the most perilous locations on Earth.
The Bay of Naples is a semicircular inlet, and the reason why it's particularly dangerous is because of two active volcanoes in the region.
Flanking the sprawling urban areas of Naples, there are two significant volcanic centers, Mount Vesuvius to the west and the Phlegraean Fields to the east. The region is home to several million people.
This region witnessed one of the most devastating volcanic eruptions in Europe, an event that has made its way into the history books. Today, scientists are confident that history could very well repeat itself. Every year, millions of individuals embark on a journey to reach its peak. Mount Vesuvius is an essential destination for hikers. Serving as a true emblem of Naples, the planet's most renowned volcano casts its ominous shadow over the bay.
This volcano is linked to a phenomenon known as subduction, where one tectonic plate plunges beneath another. It is the result of Africa converging northward towards Europe, ultimately leading to the closure of the Mediterranean Sea.
One tectonic plate sinks beneath the other, and during this process, the descending plate experiences changes in pressure and temperature. As a result, certain minerals undergo metamorphic changes and evolve. This process facilitates the generation of magma above the subducting plate.
What usually happens is, as this magma or molten rock is moving towards the surface, gas bubbles can start to form. It can take up more and more space, and at some point the system just gets overpressured and causes and triggers an eruption.
As magma rises to the surface, it pushes against the Earth's crust, giving rise to the formation of a volcano. Mount Vesuvius has been around for approximately 300,000 years. It has undergone numerous eruptions, which have gradually transformed its physical features.
So Vesuvius volcano is a volcano that we call a stratovolcano. That means it's made up of different layers of kind of ash and lava over time, and it's built this kind of steep cone. And these types of volcanoes are very prone to explosive volcanic eruptions, and that makes them particularly dangerous.
When you hike up Mount Vesuvius, an amazing and awe-inspiring volcano, you can still observe fumaroles. This indicates that the volcano is in a dormant state, not completely extinguished.
Mount Vesuvius has played a significant role in shaping history. It's one of the volcanoes that paved the way for the field of volcanology, and in the end, it's also the one that can catch us off guard the most.
The Neapolitans live in the immediate vicinity of this potential disaster, despite the reminder given by the ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum. 2,000 years ago, Mount Vesuvius buried these Roman cities under a torrent of ash and volcanic debris.
In less than 24 hours, it was over. This is one of the deadliest volcanic eruptions in the history of humanity.
The big question is, what happened in the past, what can happen now in the future? And for us, it was important to reconstruct the past activity.
Volcanologists have conducted a thorough examination of the progression of this eruption and have established a detailed chronology, aided significantly by contemporary eyewitness. At the age of 18, Pliny the Younger is about to witness the catastrophe unfold before his eyes. Forever impacted, he will vividly recount every detail. The buildings all around us tottered. There was no remaining without imminent danger. A panic-stricken crowd followed us and pressed on us in dense array. On October 24, 79 AD, following 800 years of dormancy, Mount Vesuvius violently roused from its slumber.
On that day, the peak of Mount Vesuvius erupted, resulting in the creation of a massive plume of ash. The rocks shattered during the explosion transformed into a fine powder, forming volcanic ash, which is an extremely fine type of lava dust. When this ash mixed with the forceful expelled gas, it propelled the ash column upwards, reaching an impressive altitude of approximately 20 miles. This is a remarkable scale of eruption.
This type of eruption will bear the name of the first person to describe it. It will be called Plinian, in honor of Pliny the Younger.
And then in that early stage, a lot of the falling rocks came out from that ash cloud and landed on Pompeii.
This vast plume of ash spread across the entire region for a duration of 13 hours.
Pompeii started to receive this heavy rain of pumice. And when I say heavy rain, I speak about pumice of the 2-3 centimeters. There were also fragments of lava that was falling as well, and that could have been very dangerous if you were outside.
This ashfall forced many residents to seek refuge inside their homes. However, the accumulation of ash on the roofs caused them to collapse, making it impossible to leave their houses. Additionally, inhaling the volcanic gases and the inhalation of this extremely fine dust likely caused the death of many residents.
Panic has spread throughout the city. Terrified, most of the residents of Pompeii and Herculaneum flee towards Naples. The ash and gas showers persist for hours. Out of the 20,000 residents in Pompeii, only 2,000 individuals managed to survive, and a full-blown catastrophe is about to descend upon them as the eruption is about to reach its most destructive stage.
So after we had this big eruption column going into the atmosphere and the pumice falling out from the sky and raining down on the land, some of that column couldn't stay being propelled up anymore and started to collapse back down.
The column eventually collapses under its own weight, resulting in the formation of volcanic material flows.
So these flows are called pyroclastic flows and surges. So these are these hot, very hot, gas-rich, and with lots of fragments of volcanic materials and ash that come racing down the slopes of the volcano at very high speeds.
These pyroclastic flows, also known as pyroclastic surges, were captured on camera in 2016 at Mount Sinabung in Indonesia.
It's a scorching cloud with temperatures ranging from 400 to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, racing at high speeds of 120, 180, 300 miles per hour, covering great distances. Any attempt to escape is futile.
This current were able to go everywhere radially around the volcano. I would say at 8 o'clock of the new day, of the 25th, all the people were killed and a lot of town was destroyed by the arrival of this strong and energetic current.
All in all, Mount Vesuvius claimed the lives of 15,000 people in the region, wiping the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum off the map.
Those who did not evacuate were forever trapped. They were buried beneath layers of ash. Their remains were unearthed thousands of years later.
Following more recent volcanic eruptions, victims of pyroclastic flows have been discovered in strikingly similar posture to those found in Pompeii. It is theorized that the intense heat from these pyroclastic surges leads to a dehydration of the muscles, causing the distinct curled-up position observed in the Pompeii victims.
Up from the crater of 4,000-foot-high Mount Vesuvius rise towering clouds of smoke and volcanic ash. Now, as if in violent compensation for its days of good behavior, Vesuvius once again strikes terror into the surrounding Italian countryside.
Since the year 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius has experienced multiple eruptions, leading to the loss of thousands of lives. The latest eruption took place in 1944. Amidst the chaos of World War II, a lava flow devastated villages, resulting in the tragic deaths of 26 people and leaving 12,000 individuals homeless. According to scientists, Mount Vesuvius is far from finished. It is actually already gearing up for its next eruption.
Currently, the chimney is blocked, causing a buildup of volcanic material deep beneath the surface. The release of gas is impeded. This situation could potentially lead to a significant explosion. What's concerning is that the city of Naples is in close proximity. If pyroclastic flows were to occur, it would take just a matter of minutes for them to reach the city.
Officials are preparing for its upcoming eruption. Mount Vesuvius is under continuous monitoring. Each seismic activity is recorded, gas emissions are scrutinized, and a satellite watches the volcano's behavior. The situation in the Bay of Naples is particularly worrisome, as Mount Vesuvius is not the only highly hazardous volcano in the region. It is simply the most prominent one. On the other side of the bay, an unforeseen danger is lurking, one that experts fear could bring about disastrous consequences.
Campi Phlegraean, it's a hole in the ground. You look at it and you don't see what my mum and dad would think that's a volcano, because it's just lots of coalesced craters, little cones, and it's totally covered in houses. So you can't even see the cones and craters very well.
It's not very visible in the topography, so people aren't very familiar with it. But it's a much bigger volcano than Vesuvius, in fact, and it's a highly hazardous and dangerous volcano.
The Phlegraean Fields are nothing like what we typically envision when we think of a volcano. This extensive volcanic system covers an area of 39 square miles on land, but also extends beneath the sea. It is considered by scientists to be one of the most alarming volcanic threats on Earth, surpassing even the danger posed by Mount Vesuvius.
The Phlegraean Fields were the site of a major eruption 40,000 years ago, registering a magnitude of 7.5 on a scale of 8 or 9. It is considered the largest eruption Europe has ever experienced.
But this was a very large eruption indeed, of the order of 50 times larger than the Pompeii eruption of Vesuvius. It produced what we call pyroclastic flows, and they would have spread out, and we know they spread out because we find their deposits very far from the volcano, up to 80, 90 kilometers from the volcano in all directions, and way over what is now the city of Naples.
Out of this initial cataclysm emerged a massive crater stretching 8 miles in diameter today, with a portion of it submerged in the waters of the Bay of Naples. This impressive crater is referred to as a caldera.
So a caldera is a type of crater that forms when there's an incredibly powerful eruption, releasing a massive amount of volcanic materials. This eruption essentially drains the deep magma reservoir. As a result, the underlying ground becomes too weak to withstand the weight of the volcano. Consequently, the volcano collapses inward, forming these huge sinkhole-like craters called calderas.
The caldera surrounds the volcano, and inside it, various events take place that give rise to the formation of multiple small volcanoes during each eruption. There are dozens of them.
Currently, there are 72 miniature volcanoes situated within the caldera. Despite the enormous risk, individuals have chosen to inhabit the lands of this colossal volcanic ensemble. These settlements have already witnessed catastrophic outcomes, as evidenced by the emergence of Monte Nuovo.
Campi Phlegraean is a good example of risk and danger, because the last eruption, Monte Nuovo, it was a fairly small eruption, but it was in a town.
It was 5 centuries ago, in the year 1538, while the residents were peacefully slumbering. The earth suddenly fractured, giving rise to the emergence of a volcano in the heart of the city.
It did a lot of damage. There's pictures of it, and there's all ash and bombs with dogs flying through the air, and people flying through the air. Because it opened in a town, it was dangerous, even if small.
A disaster that has the potential to occur at any given moment, as currently there are 7 municipalities situated within the core of the caldera.
Football ground of Naples is inside one of the vents. So it's a town not on a volcano, it's a town in a volcano.
Currently, around 340,000 individuals are believed to be living in the red zone of the Phlegraean Fields, which is considered the highest priority area for evacuation in the event of a future eruption.
In their control room, Italian volcanologists keep a constant watch on the Phlegraean Fields, documenting every seismic activity in real time. The top priority for authorities is to be fully prepared for the potential sudden reawakening of the Phlegraean Fields and ensure timely evacuation of the population.
We have a highly populated city, densely packed, with narrow roadways, such as the narrow streets of Naples. How can we safely evacuate when an eruption occurs?
That would bury buildings, the fast-moving ash clouds would make it hard for people to escape in time, the roads would be covered, possibly in lava or volcanic ash, plus we don't know how much warning time we might get for the next eruption. If it's a case of a day or two, then you have a real struggle to move that many people and also put, plans into place immediately.
We can remain hopeful that with the progress in the field of volcanology, we would be able to anticipate such events. We may have sufficient time, maybe a few weeks or a fortnight, provided that the magma ascent is gradual enough, to evacuate individuals residing in the vicinity of the volcano's immediate surroundings.
Indeed, since the late 2000s, the Phlegraean Fields have displayed concerning indications of activity. In certain areas, there have been bubbling whirlpools and significant mud pools forming. Not only are they expanding in size, but their temperatures are also rising. Geologists are firmly convinced that the Phlegraean Fields are exhibiting signs of reawakening.
When you explore the caldera of the Phlegraean Fields in the Pozzuoli region, you'll be amazed by the gurgling and bubbling of the ground. There are sounds, hot springs, fumaroles, and spots with muddy areas. And in certain places, you'll find barriers to prevent anyone from accidentally stepping into the boiling mud.
You can often see the volcano breathing, so the land surface actually inflates and deflates like a balloon. So there's even been about 4 meters of movement inside this caldera, and this is where everybody's living their everyday lives.
The ground is swelling, a clear indication of subsurface magma movement, so the Phlegraean Fields are in a state of restless slumber. They are under constant surveillance and have the potential to awaken.
Caught between the unruly Phlegraean Fields and the impending eruption of Mount Vesuvius, Naples finds itself in the grip of a fiery vice.
This is a living and shifting system with tens of thousands of people living directly above it and hundreds of thousands living nearby. So which one should we be concerned about? Mount Vesuvius or the Phlegraean Fields? Well, only time will tell.
In this perilous region, volcanologists have embarked on a race against time. The people of Naples are not alone in living with this looming threat. Each year, approximately 60 volcanoes erupt worldwide, causing destruction to homes, infrastructure, and even entire cities.
We're not going to be able to stop volcanoes erupting, but what we can try to do is minimize the impacts to people, possessions, infrastructure.
However, there are instances when the disaster strikes suddenly, leaving the population with no time to flee. This was a situation on May 8, 1902, when the volcano Mount Pelée decimated the city of Saint-Pierre, which stood at the volcano's foothills.
In the case of the Mount Pelée eruption, what is truly remarkable is its sheer suddenness. 28,000 inhabitants were swallowed up and simply vanished. It all happened in a matter of seconds.
Today, experts firmly believe that this doomsday scenario is closer than ever to repeating itself. The northern part of Martinique is home to Mount Pelée. Along its slopes, 7 communities are nestled, with nearly 30,000 residents living under the constant yet imperceptible threat it poses.
This volcano is frequently cloaked in clouds. It reveals itself only about once a week, so when it does, people gather around to take pictures and admire it.
This volcano boasts a prominent dome made of hardened lava at its peak. It looms over the city of Saint-Pierre and the Bay of Saint-Pierre. Additionally, there are several small communities around the volcano, with residential dwellings scattered along its slopes.
Every day, the scientists at the Volcanological and Seismological Observatory of Martinique remain vigilant. On the flanks of Mount Pelée, the sensors provide unequivocal evidence. The occurrence of earthquakes is steadily increasing. More than 120 years since its last eruption. Is Mount Pelée stirring from its slumber?
The volcanic activity is on the rise. From the 1980s to 2019, we typically observed 2 volcanic earthquakes per month. However, since early 2019, the frequency of volcanic tectonic earthquakes has increased to around 30.
These earthquakes' intensities are not yet noticeable to the population. However, this doesn't prevent the authorities from treating them with utmost seriousness.
The volcano has shown heightened seismic activity, suggesting a shift in its behavior. As a result, since late 2020, authorities have raised the alert level for Mount Pelée to yellow.
The yellow alert status clearly indicates that an eruption is likely. The question remains as to when it will occur.
This volcano has witnessed numerous explosive eruptions over the centuries. It is undoubtedly the most dangerous volcano in France.
In Saint-Pierre, no one has forgotten the eruption of May 8, 1902. It remains one of the greatest tragedies of the 20th century, a haunting reminder etched into the daily lives of its inhabitants. However, there were many warning signs leading up to the disaster on May 8, 1902.
The eruptive phase kicks off in February when the scent of sulfur permeated Saint-Pierre. Inside homes, silverware darkened in their cases, which was a bit concerning.
In the weeks leading up to the catastrophe, there were instances of minor eruptions, primarily consisting of water vapor. These eruptions are known as phreatic eruptions.
The magma reservoir, located around 5 to 6 miles deep, started to stir. This upward movement of magma led to the heating of the groundwater, causing it to vaporize. The pressurization and rapid release of these vaporized groundwater resulted in explosions. Therefore, a sequence of explosions took place from April 23rd until May 8th.
In Saint-Pierre, just 3 miles away from the volcano, darkness fell upon the city. Despite this, the population did not evacuate. A few decades prior, similar phreatic explosions had occurred and did not cause any significant damage. However, this time, a completely different and catastrophic scenario begins to unfold, one that the residents of Saint-Pierre could never have anticipated.
On May 8, 1902, at 8:02 a.m., the mountain erupted, changing everything. What actually happened was that magma had been building up at the summit of the volcano, and then there was a sudden lateral explosion.
Inside the volcano, the magma deviated from its usual path of upward escape through the chimney and rushed into a lateral fissure. It is through this fissure, located to the southwest of the crater, that the gases which triggered the explosion emerged.
A lateral explosion carries a higher level of danger compared to a vertical Plinian eruption, as all the energy is focused in one direction.
The explosion unleashed a chaotic torrent of ash, debris, and gases, hurtling at a speed of 300 miles per hour and reaching temperatures of 480 degrees Fahrenheit. It charged eastward, swept through the White River Valley towards Saint-Pierre, obliterating a triangular zone spanning 22 square miles.
It's an apocalyptic scene in the blink of an eye. It took only a few minutes for this cascade of fiery and glowing materials to reach the coastal areas.
With tremendous force, this surge of high-speed volcanic materials generated an atmospheric shockwave.
The shockwave struck a few seconds before the arrival of the expelled materials. Research has indicated that the internal organs of the human body were unable to withstand the impact of the shockwave. Many residents were fatally struck by the explosion itself.
It's like the city has been struck by an atomic bomb.
It's a horrifying sight. Dead bodies cover the city. The heat was so intense that it caused glass and bottles to melt.
You could think that the eruption came to a halt at the coastline, but that was not the case. In fact, these pyroclastic flows have the ability to continue their journey, almost like surfing on the water. And that's exactly what occurred over several hundred meters, resulting in the rapid sinking of the few ships moored in Saint-Pierre's harbor.
The eruption claimed the lives of 28,000 people, making it the most devastating volcanic event of the 20th century.
Within a span of just 2 minutes, the eruption wiped out Saint-Pierre, obliterating more than 1/10 of the population of Martinique at that time, which was approximately 200,000 people. Only 2 individuals survived the disaster: a prisoner shielded by the sturdy walls of this cell, and a shoemaker who happened to be in the depths of his basement when the eruption occurred.
Following the events of May 8, 1902, Mount Pelée continued to release pyroclastic flows, although they decreased in intensity over time. This might have led some to believe that the eruption was calming down. However, on August 30, a larger pyroclastic flow, potentially twice the size of the initial one, was unleashed. With a significantly broader reach, as it encompassed not just Saint-Pierre but also the town of Morne-Rouge, causing destruction and resulting in the tragic loss of 1,500 lives.
This tragedy stands as one of the deadliest in modern history, holding the unfortunate distinction of having the highest number of fatalities solely attributed to a volcanic event.
Volcanoes can persist for hundreds of thousands of years. Mount Pelée is 300,000 years old and may remain active for another 100,000 years or longer.
So the goal is to learn from the past, Monitor the present and be prepared to react quickly when it happens again, because it's inevitable, it will happen again.
The volcanologists studying the Mount Pelée at the observatory have recently made a groundbreaking discovery that has the potential to significantly alter our understanding.
Our studies have shown a consistent link between the reactivation of the deep magma reservoir located approximately 5 to 6 miles beneath the surface and eruptions. This process unfolds over a period of 1.5 years to 2 years. Such patterns have been observed in the majority of eruptions over the past 5,000 years. This implies that a significant increase in activity, particularly deep-seated seismic activity, could serve as an important warning sign with a potential lead time of 1.5 to 2 years before the eruption.
The haunting specter of pyroclastic flows and cascading molten lava is always on our minds. But some eruptions can have equally devastating indirect consequences. One of these disasters currently threatens Seattle on the west coast of the United States. Every day, its residents catch sight of a massive volcano in the distance, Mount Rainier. It is located at the heart of the Cascade Range, an ancient chain of mountains and volcanoes that constitutes the primary volcanic hazard for the United States. According to scientists, Mount Rainier is the country's most dangerous volcano.
One of the biggest threats in the Cascade Range to the US is Mount Rainier, a big volcano. So this volcano is over 4,000 meters in height, and it's covered in this ice and these glaciers.
Given the size of the volcano and the potential magma recharge occurring beneath it, if it were to undergo an eruption, it would be a strong contender for causing major problems. But if you add to that the presence of a glacier, well, when magma comes into contact with ice, it creates an even more explosive situation.
Located nearly 60 miles north of Mount Rainier, Seattle is beyond the reach of the pyroclastic flows that would result from a major eruption. However, if this titan of fire and ice were to explode, there is another threat that could potentially engulf the city. This doomsday scenario is not a product of imagination. On May 18, 1980, the eruption of Mount St. Helens, the smaller sibling and neighbor of Mount Rainier in the Cascade Range, caused widespread devastation. The eruption was captured on live film, and the terrifying footage sent shivers down the spines of both volcanologists and authorities.
Mount St. Helens is another active volcano in the US, and in 1980, that underwent an explosive eruption that might produce a kind of a similar effect to what we see at Mount Rainier.
On March 27, 1980, the eruption of Mount St. Helens began.
We are directly over Mount St. Helens right now. You can see smoke and ash, and there is no question at all that the volcanic activity has begun.
The surrounding areas are immediately evacuated. In the following days, American volcanologists are brought in as reinforcements, anticipating the eruption. Phreatic eruptions were occurring with increasing frequency at the summit of Mount St. Helens. Meanwhile, an enigmatic phenomenon is unfolding on one side of the volcano, completely unbeknownst to the experts.
Slowly, the volcano began to inflate, and it started to inflate towards the north in a very asymmetric way. The volcano inflated about 1.5 or even 2 meters a day.
The volcano was so full of magma, and its slopes were so steep, especially on the side where a feature called the bulge, like a pregnant volcano with the bulge out the front, was horrifically unstable and ready, we know now, to slide.
That's when the ground began to shake. The scientists were astonished by what they saw. An entire flank of the volcano collapsed. In under 20 seconds, the magma trapped in the conduit erupted, releasing a torrent of scorching volcanic materials.
When you release pressure on magma, it's like opening the top of a shaken up Coca-Cola tin. Lots of bubbles which are inside the liquid, because it's under huge pressure, were released.
During its expulsion, the magma unleashed an incredibly powerful shockwave. In less than 3 minutes, this blast wreaked havoc, leaving devastation in its wake.
So there were just something like 4 to 6 seconds before the slide happening, and the blast progressing. And then just a matter of tens of seconds before that blast overwhelmed people within 5, 6, 7 kilometers.
The eruption of Mount St. Helens in the 1980s resulted in the total devastation of 230 square miles of forest, which is about 6 times the size of Paris. The impact was immense. While the eruption claimed a relatively small number of lives, around 60, this can be attributed to the fact that the region was sparsely populated. However, the ecological consequences were severe, with estimates suggesting that thousands of significant animals, including bears and deer, perished in this volcanic event.
The massive eruption of Mount St. Helens led to the melting of ice and snow on its summit. When combined with the hot rocks and gases from the volcano, the water created enormous mud flows known as lahars.
These lahars, these mud flows, are very powerful. They're like concrete. They can be hot or cold, but they flow down the volcano slides. They can be, tens to 100 meters in thickness, just bury everything that they come across. Get up!
The eruption of Mount St. Helens resulted in the most significant lahars ever witnessed. These lahars extended as far as 25 miles from the volcano. Seattle faces the same scenario. American experts can barely fathom the potential consequences if Mount Rainier were to erupt soon. The colossal volume of ice covering its summit could give rise to far more substantial lahars than those witnessed during the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
All these kind of streams or river valleys coming down off the flanks of the volcano is often the path that the lahars will take as well. And so you just want to make sure that you're far away from the river valleys.
The scientists at the United States Geological Survey are working tirelessly to determine the potential path that these lahars could take during the next major eruption of Mount Rainier. They have conducted simulations, and here is the area that these lahars could engulf. The entire southern suburbs of Seattle would be affected, including the cities of Ording, Tacoma, Auburn, Kent, and Renton. There could be hundreds of thousands of potential victims.
Mount Rainier is dangerous because the fluvial system heads out through Seattle. So like at Mount St. Helens, if there's a big eruption and mud flows, they're going to go down the valley and very quickly enter populated areas.
Volcanologists may not be able to predict the precise timing of Mount Rainier's next eruption, but they are well aware that this dormant behemoth is gradually stirring, and they must be prepared to react promptly. The volatile mixture of water and fire poses a significant threat. When volcanoes are located near bodies of water, the danger is amplified. This is why volcanologists closely monitor volcanoes that emerge from the ocean. In 2018, one of them tragically made a lasting impression on their minds. More than 130 active volcanoes, out of over 1,600 worldwide, are located in Indonesia. Among them is Krakatoa. This volcanic archipelago is situated between the islands of Sumatra and Java.
Krakatoa is particularly worrisome because of its marine setting, its ocean setting, close to a very populated shoreline.
Currently, there are 2 million people living in close proximity to this volcano. The islands of Java and Sumatra are among the most densely populated regions in the world.
The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa was one of the most deadly. So it's about twice as large as the eruption of Pompeii.
More than a century ago, Krakatoa unleashed a catastrophic event. On August 27, 1883, the ground began to shake, accompanied by rumblings as the volcano erupted, ejecting debris that formed a massive gray cloud.
We could hear the eruption noise all the way in Australia, 3,000 miles away from the volcano. It was the most violent sound ever heard in historical times.
The deafening noise was so intense that within a radius of 100 miles, many people experienced hearing impairments.
The volcano, no longer supported by its magma chamber, collapses upon itself. And as it collapses, it creates a large crater. And in a marine environment, when you have a large crater, you have a lot of water rushing in. And that water will then surge back in the opposite direction in the form of a massive wave known as a tsunami.
By displacing the water, the volcanic debris gave rise to colossal waves that transformed into a tsunami, devastating the coasts of Java and Sumatra. This cataclysmic explosion claimed the lives of 36,000 people. The Krakatoa collapsed beneath the depths of the Indian Ocean. 2/3 of the island vanished into the water. At that time, scientists were convinced that the volcano would not awaken anytime soon. However, in 1928, a volcanic mound emerged from the ocean, right at the very spot where Krakatoa once stood.
What happened there is then it formed quite a large hole underneath where the island used to be of Krakatoa. And then on the side of this hole, where one of the vents was, a new volcano started to grow up. And that's called Anak Krakatoa, the child of Krakatoa.
On December 22, 2018, the Anak Krakatoa unleashed a violent explosion, causing a section of the volcano to collapse into the ocean.
What happened in 2018 is that when there was some volcanic activity, part of the side of the volcano became unstable and fell back into this hole under the water.
The Anak Krakatoa once reached a height of 338 meters. Here is what remains of it today. The repercussions of its collapse were devastating.
And that pushed the water and made another tsunami that then, caught people by surprise.
As evidenced by these marks, a massive wall of water, measuring several tens of meters in height, crashed upon the shorelines.
Tsunami, it's not one wave. That moves on land, backwashes over a period of a few minutes. And then there might be a second wave come in and out, a third. Now, for Krakatoa, I believe there were 3 or 4 waves with a separation of 6 to 7 minutes.
There is no footage of the 2018 tsunami. However, these videos filmed in Indonesia a few months earlier in September, following an earthquake, provide a glimpse of the horror endured by the population.
If there are buildings, it will carry away those buildings, it will carry people away, and then when the water eventually drains out, of course it carries a lot of that material with it out to sea, including people. So these tsunami waves are extremely destructive.
After it passed, the tsunami only left behind a scene of destruction. It claimed 430 lives and left a devastated zone in its wake.
In subsequent months, it began to emerge from the ocean again, and now it's beginning to rebuild its cone.
It's hard to predict exactly what the future eruptions will be like at Anak Krakatoa, but what we've seen also is that you don't need a big eruption to generate one of these deadly tsunamis that pushes the water towards the other islands and impacts the people.
Scientists have limited knowledge about tsunamis, and no matter how much progress is made in the field of volcanology, it will never become an exact science.
The problem in volcanology is you can't predict with certainty. What you can do is you can make measurements using sophisticated instruments. You can also study what the volcano has done in the past. That's a very important approach as well, because often what's happened in the past is rather a key to what it can do in the future.
While most active volcanoes are now under surveillance, some long dormant ones sometimes slip through the cracks. And when they awaken, it becomes a race against time for volcanologists and authorities. This was the case with Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. Its violent eruption caught everyone off guard.
Since it hadn't erupted in a while, it wasn't well known among volcanologists and the local residents.
In 1991, the Pinatubo, located less than 60 miles northwest of Manila, the capital city, erupted dramatically, breaking its 5 centuries-long slumber. Until then, it had gone unnoticed.
Up until 1991, the Pinatubo hadn't had a historic eruption, so it wasn't even really recognized that it was an active volcano capable of large-scale volcanic eruptions.
At times, one catastrophe is preceded by another, as was the situation in July 1990, when a severe earthquake near the vicinity of Pinatubo resulted in the loss of hundreds of lives. This seismic event might have facilitated the ascent of magma through fissures within the volcano. In any case, 8 months later, a growing number of tremors were being detected in the vicinity of Pinatubo.
Of March of 1991, the seismicity underneath Mount Pinatubo began to increase.
That caused, an alarm that the volcano might be waking up from this long slumber.
The authorities' priority was to establish an evacuation protocol.
We didn't know really what to expect in terms of signals, so the volcanologists were discovering as they went along.
And they realized from studying some of the deposits that it's capable of these large-scale volcanic eruptions. This wasn't an area that already had been mapped for volcanic hazards, and so very quickly the authorities then had to determine evacuation zones in place if a future eruption or an eruption was going to occur.
The authorities made the decision to implement 3 evacuation zones at a radius of 6 miles, 12 miles, and 25 miles from Pinatubo. In April 1991, the volcano awakened from its slumber. A first phreatomagmatic eruption occurred. Many people living on the slopes of the volcano abandoned their villages. On April 7th, a 6-mile zone around the volcano was evacuated. However, for the volcanologists, it was still challenging to assess the danger.
It wasn't always easy because during the build-up to an eruption like this, there's a lot of kind of highs and lows. The seismicity, the ground shaking would increase and then decrease and then increase and decrease. And they described it at the time as a real roller coaster. Sometimes they think that the volcano was calming down, sometimes it was building up.
But the volcano still had more surprises in store.
What then alerted the volcanologists that something more major could happen was that the magma itself started coming out, what we call a lava dome, a sort of lava, very sticky lava flow. So the magma itself now had reached the surface.
Domes were starting to form, which is a concerning sign on a stratovolcano. We know that when a dome begins to form, it can lead to a hazardous situation. On June 7th, the alert level was raised as the situation became increasingly critical.
The eruptions were intensifying, and a blanket of ash covered everything. On June 7th, the authorities made the decision to evacuate a secondary zone, extending 12 miles around the volcano. The eruption of the century was on the horizon, yet the volcanologists were unable to foresee it.
Conditions were made even worse by the fact that during the preliminary explosions, pyroclastic flows were taking out the instruments, so they were losing information, they were going blind.
On June 14th, the alert level was raised to 5. 60,000 individuals were evacuated from within a 24 miles radius of the volcano.
The alert level is maxed out. We're at 5 out of 5, the red level, so to speak. It means it's necessary to evacuate the population over a significant distance. They're telling folks to leave right now. Everybody's got to go. Why? Do people got to believe them? Not necessarily, but the authorities made a pretty convincing case to make sure things go smoothly.
On June 15th, 1991, the eruption reached its climax.
These are huge detonations. And then the amount of energy released during the eruption itself, many, many times, the Hiroshima atomic bomb, for example.
The eruption of Pinatubo was the most significant of the 20th century. Those who were on site witnessed a surreal phenomenon as daylight turned into darkness. The ashfall was so intense that vehicles had to navigate with their headlights on. To shield themselves from the ash, people put cardboard or plastic bags over their heads with makeshift eye holes. They struggled to breathe. For those who experienced it, it felt like a true apocalypse.
On the same day, a typhoon hit the Philippines, causing a chaotic combination of volcanic ash and rainfall, resulting in the formation of lahars.
These volcanic mud flows did a lot of damage, and they still continue to this day because the volcanic material is still present and the rainfall can still produce lahars long after the volcanic eruption is finished.
Nearly 1,000 Filipinos died during the cataclysmic eruption of Pinatubo. But thanks to the authorities' evacuation plan, more than 300,000 people were saved, a record-breaking achievement. The evacuation of the towns surrounding Pinatubo was one of the most successful in history.
Even though there were a number of fatalities associated with the Pinatubo eruption, it could have been a very different situation with much more people that lost lives and damage to infrastructure and property. So the authorities did an incredible job to, very quickly get monitoring equipment onto the volcano and to really try to realize the potential of a large-scale eruption that Mount Pinatubo was capable of. And luckily, because of this effective plans and communication and that people listened to these plans, they were able to save actually a lot of lives and infrastructure and reduce the impact on people and economic costs.
Across the ages, volcanic risk has shaped the lives of countless individuals worldwide. This perpetual coexistence serves as a constant reminder of our inherent vulnerability and the importance of cherishing and preserving the world that surrounds us.